On set on my immediate right is Michael Gitau, of course, from the Burn Society of Kenya. The Center Lawrence Mwangi, of course, will give us his assessment, and he's a survivor. And of course, Conrad Wanyama is from the Kenya Red Cross and Society. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. Of course, a lot to discuss here. And Michael Gitau, I will start up with you. Clearly, there are many types of fire, or fires, and our audience would like to know about that in an explanation, in a nutshell. How do they segment? What are the types that we have?
All right. Basically, we have 4 classes of fire, commonly known. One, we have Class A, Class B, Class C, and Class D. Very easy. Now, Class A involves mostly the combustible materials, that is the paperwork, wood, carpet, and rubbish. Then we have the Class B that would be involving liquids, that is cooking oils, the gas coming there. Then we have the Class C that involve electrical appliances, and a Class D which is not very common, which involve now metal, combustible matters. So that is basically what we have, and of course how you fight them is going to be different, and how you approach them. Okay,
we are coming to that, of course, the measures put in place so that you can combat the types that you have just mentioned. Lawrence at the center, from a survivor's perspective, tell us, what happened ever since 2000? That was the point with which you came into contact with the fire, and we are very sorry for that. Of course, it's an emotional one, but what preventive mechanisms do you think should be adopted to prevent such scenarios?
I think one of the best ways to prevent such a scenario is creating awareness, and awareness at large, that we can be able to reach people in the grassroots there, that these people, they need to be educated on ways in which they can actually prevent fires. Being a fire survivor, which happened in the incident of around 2000, that is 18 years ago, my condition was that I was epileptic. So my mom never knew that I was epileptic up to this time. When it happened on this day, she just left me in the kitchen, and after some time, the accident just happened. Well, without these preventive measures being taken at the grassroots, such people in those areas cannot be able to adopt good measures or other precautive measures that can be able to fight against fire.
Okay, Conrad, clearly, then these preventive mechanisms do need to be embraced or acknowledged or appreciated in many homesteads, because clearly we have the different scenarios with which fires normally start in our homesteads or in our places of worship or even in places of business. We have seen what happened in the Gikomba market. We'll come back to discuss what causes this. But how important are these preventive measures in place, especially to parents? Because at times the causes of this fire, or the cause, is as the result of negligence. It's what you can prevent, what you can put in place to ensure that it doesn't happen. But because of negligence, or just opening up that particular pathway, then the fires can start and then cause the consequences.
It's true, of course. Waiting for a fire to happen is disastrous. The cost of response is huge. We are aware that fires lead to deaths. Fires lead to damage to property, and they can sink businesses. So yes, we are aware that the best way to manage fires as incidents is indeed to prevent fires. And at home particularly, we emphasize a lot on aspects to do with housekeeping. So basic housekeeping roles are important. Switching off gases before you go to sleep, making sure that your electrical appliances are functional, that they are not old appliances, that you have a check on them, looking at your sockets, making sure that they don't trip, you don't overload sockets. Those are basic things that indeed we are aware will contribute immensely to preventing fires. Okay, Michael Gitau.
Yes.
Take us through now how to combat the different classes A, B, C, and D, because that is a point of interest perhaps for the taxpayers out there or the viewers wanting to understand or getting clarity on that in simplistic form. How do we battle A, B, C, and D classes of fire?
Right, we have different firefighting appliances, and commonly that we have in our houses is water. That is one of the commonest we have, which now can only tackle mostly now Class A's. This is the wood, the paper, and the rubbish, or maybe the carpets. But when it comes to case of where you have now liquids, maybe you're cooking your chapati mandazi and you throw water in there, then you will have a flare because now the water happened to be a bit heavier than this liquid. So that you do not want to do. So that you would want now to cover with a blanket. Now there is a firefighting blanket that is usually used, but if you do not have that now, you can douse the normal blanket in water, make it wet and cover the sufuria. That will pretty much cover. Now for the electrical one, that the best way to go about it is to switch off the main switch, because now if you don't cut off the main, then of course you would have an aggravation. So that is one of the things that you would do. Now the metal ones, it's not pretty much common unless they're happening in steel industry where they're melting or fabricating metals, or the airports, and that's the point they have fully fledged firefighting, and they have appliances. But what I would want as well to say now to the corporate, because one, it's a legal requirement to comply, first of all, to have firefighting appliances in place, because you see schools, churches, businesses going ablaze just because you don't put up the firefighting appliances. And another key is you have them, but do you know how to use them? That's another point. You could be having an equipment there, but do you know how to use it? Because a fire extinguisher, it's pretty much easy to use it, which is a very easy method, I would say, which is use a PASS, P-A-S-S, which means you pull the pin, because usually a pin that is locking to, for prevention purposes. Then you lift the fire extinguisher and you direct the hose straight to the fire, and you extinguish, which you push the operating lever, and of course the material is going to come and straight to the fire, and pretty much that is how easy it is. And for the other point that maybe I didn't talk about is for the community, even the sand, it's pretty much easier to use even sand to throw it onto the fire, and of course you're going to
safety tips well outlined, and clearly they are very simple. Lawrence at the center, coming to you from a survivor's perspective. I mean, you are a child when this happened to you, and children are at a greater risk of being exposed because of their thinner skin compared to male. So how well do parents need to be cautious in the sense that they don't just leave their children perhaps in the places of cooking like the kitchen, or exposed to, electrical cords that are not well in line with the sockets, for instance, therefore practice the ultimate responsibility of the parenthood or parenting in the sense that they don't leave the children exposed?
Well, number one is when we create awareness to these people, they shall be having the whole reflection of what they should be doing. Now, for example, in my case, I was epileptic. My condition was not known to anyone in my family until this day. And remember, this is the only day that I was epileptic. It has never happened in any other day in my life. So, in any way, when we come together with the Red Cross, together with other organizations, and we create awareness to these people and we tell them, now, this is how you should do it. Now, for example, in my case, if my mother knew that epilepsy leads to this and this and this, such a condition could be avoided, because in any way, I cannot go to the kitchen all alone. I can also not climb trees. I can also be on, anyway, you cannot also go driving along the roads. So these are some of the precautive measures which when we address them to these people in the grassroots, they shall be able to copy them and they shall employ them in their daily activities.
Coming to you at the far end, Conrad Wanyama, clearly then there needs to be policies and frameworks in place or measures to ensure that there is the ultimate practice of legislations that are in place. For instance, if you're to set up a structure or a building, then there's need to have fire safety mechanisms. How well do the policies need to be coupling up with this to ensure that there's safety in the event of fire? Because some of the causes of this fire too, we need to appreciate, are natural causes or perhaps electrical fault.
Thank you for the questions. I think first of all is to highlight what are these policies that the public may need to be aware of. So every workplace ought to be a registered workplace, and there is a law that provides for that under the Directorate of Occupational Safety and Health, the so-called Occupational Safety and Health Act of 2007, and later on amended quite a couple of times. So it does provide for what are the basic requirements for the occupier of a workplace or the owner of that workplace. And some of the things that are important is that every workplace ought to have persons who are trained in response for emergency incidents, be it first aiders or fire marshals. So that is a policy requirement. Every workplace ought to have those fire appliances, so fire extinguishers and an evacuation plan designed and explained to the occupiers and the visitors. In the event that there's an incident, they're able to effectively or quickly evacuate. And then, of course, we have the building code through the municipalities previously, and of course, currently what we call the county governments. We are aware, for example, if you're in Nairobi, the current county now asks that workplaces, beyond just having them certified as business enterprises, they also need to have a certificate called a fire clearance certificate.
Okay.
That essentially means that their workplace is safe for occupancy, but also it is fireproof, almost fireproof, so to speak.
Okay.
So those are important legislations that we emphasize are important. But the downside to that is that many of these legislations target workplaces. We do not have legislations that target homes. So if I have a home, there is no law that asks me, for example, to set up an emergency evacuation plan and such things. So then what that therefore means is that the public is at the mercy of getting information from the media or social media, which may not necessarily be accurate information. So organizations like Red Cross may come in particularly to help in designing training programs that will target the public.
Okay, perhaps.